Good evening, I'm Liz Hutchins, chairing this evening on behalf of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign in Wales. This event is being broadcast live on YouTube from the historic and beautiful Norwegian Church Art Centre in May, just a few metres from the Senedd. So, Christopher, a warm welcome to this Senedd leaders debate on Palestine. For everyone here in the hall and also at home. We're going to encourage everybody to participate in either Cymru, in Welsh or in English this evening, and we have Welsh translation interpretations available by Cymru. And so there should be translation available on YouTube but also in the hall. We are expecting party leaders to join us this evening, but we've been informed that the Senedd session is running over, and unfortunately we have this eventuality, and so this is an opportunity to start the evening by talking to some amazing campaigners and people who can give us real insights into what's happening on the ground in Palestine and the campaign across Britain and in Wales. So very pleased to be joined in the first instance by May Senedd, who's a Palestinian writer and academic at May Senedd, Dr. May, and Said, who's a very central campaigner in the Palestine Solidarity Campaign in Wales. And we've got Glenn Page, who is the Chief Executive of Amnesty International in Wales. So we're going to have just a little bit of discussion before the leaders join us, just to unpack some of the situations going on. So can I start with you, Sabrine? You're a Palestinian, and I know you've been following very closely the events both in Gaza and on the West Bank. Do you want to tell us what is it that everybody should know, because clearly the mainstream media doesn't always cover things that we think are important?
Yeah, should I talk in the microphone, right? Yeah, thank you. As many Palestinians, I have been following very closely what is happening because we have family there. So I want to start by saying that for many Palestinians, and I know there are many in the rooms tonight, this is not just an abstract debate that we are having, right? We are speaking on the bodies of our family members. And that it makes everything so much real and so much more painful. You know, that there is that constant fear that whatever we may say here can ripple off there and have consequences on the ground for people who are not safe because they are under constant oppression and violence. And so the first thing that people, I would like to say to people here in Wales, is to understand the very real everyday violence that Palestinians need to face. In Gaza, we have seen in our screens, but also in the West Bank, where in the past weeks, the brutality of both settlers and army has increased to levels never seen before. We're speaking about things that members of my family have lived through 48 and 67, the Nakba and the Naksa, say they have never seen this level of brutality and violence. Like just this morning I was reading the Al Jazeera wrap-up of the week on the West Bank, and pogroms, arrests, and destruction of land, destruction of olive trees, killing of people. I mean, it was just last week that we have seen what they have done to that family, killing parents and 2 of the 4 children and holding them dogs. And I know that when we talk about things like this, people sometimes don't really understand how this is not a movie, this is not a video game, this is the real life of people. And the fact is that sometimes we have this sort of detachment also because of how our mainstream media portray things. Like, every now and then I try to have a laugh about how the BBC reports things, because that's the only thing you can have, a laugh about how Israelis are killed, but Palestinian dies. Right? Almost randomly, almost by choice. And this dehumanization, constant dehumanization, is what allows then for our representatives, our politicians, to discuss things as if they are not a matter of life and death, when they are. And like, as an Arab right now, and again, I'm sure that all the Arabs in the room understand, we wake up and go to sleep on our phones, because at any moment a text can arrive that can end our lives, like as we know them. Like, we are in a constant state of alert, and we need to start addressing this as not just a matter of a conflict, back there, far away, but as something that is really impacting citizens of Wales, people who live here, people who live and vote here, people who are part of the society in so many ways. I moved to Wales 3 years ago, and I always say I have never felt so much at home and welcome as I felt in Wales. But I also want to be represented properly by our political class, and that means understanding what I am going through and my family is going through in the West Bank. And I have friends in Gaza that have talked to me about how, since the war in Iran, on Iran broke, people forgot about what's happening in Gaza, and the Rafah crossing has been closed again. Prices of very basic food items is skyrocketing again. This friend of mine, Mahmoud, he was telling me during Eid that my daughter is asking for a dog. But I don't even know how to tell her that I can't cook Mahmoud. That is the sweets of Ramadan. And I was like, and again, it's in the details of everyday life that you see the enormous brutality of what has been done to Palestinians. And I'm gonna finish on this because I think this morning I couldn't stop crying after seeing a video taken in Nablus of this boy. The Israeli army had just taken away from him his bike, and he was completely heartbroken, and he was crying over his bike. And I couldn't stop crying at that video. Not because we haven't seen things more brutal than that, but it's because, again, it's in such a small thing that you can really see the pain and the humanity of our people, and also how heartless and completely detached from your humanity must be to inflict such a stupid pain to a boy. And yeah, I'm gonna end like that.
to make sure that the voices of Palestinians are heard and that this dehumanisation isn't successful. So thank you very much for that. You touched on the role of politicians, and clearly that's the purpose of this evening. But Glenn, do you want to say something about international law and how it bites and how it actually has relevance in Wales?
Thank you. So, right now there are proceedings in both the International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice, genocide proceedings, arrest warrants for war crimes trials. And the international legal framework in this space is immensely clear. All states have a responsibility to take urgent action to prevent genocide. And as we all know, as we just heard, the genocide in Palestine is ongoing. There is an urgency today, as there was months, years behind us, to take immediate action. And from a Welsh perspective, my work focuses on the Welsh government. Wales has a legal duty, a domestic legal duty, to be a globally responsible nation. Right? We have a legal duty on ministers in the Welsh government to act with global responsibility. Do any of you in this space see the Welsh government acting with regards to genocide in Palestine with global responsibility? What does that mean in this context? What does it mean? What actions have we seen? You know, we've called on the Welsh government many times. There's been debates in the Senedd just across the road calling for all sorts of different things, action, practical, material steps that we can take. Now, some people will say, well, foreign affairs isn't devolved, but there's nothing that we can do. And it's a shameful place to be in this context, because not just states, but we all of us have a duty to take action. And foreign affairs wasn't devolved when communities in Wales took in children from the Basque Country during the Spanish Civil War. Right? There are steps that we can take, and we should be taking them. So one of the things that we've been calling on the Welsh government is very, very simple. It's to stand up, stand with us, stand with the thousands of people up and down this country who are out every weekend, who are out knocking doors, speaking to people in their communities, campaigning for justice for the Palestinian people. Stand with us. Call on the UK government to suspend all arms exports to the Israeli state. You know, these are simple actions that are powerful, they're meaningful, and people in Wales deserve to have a government that will stand with them, will join them, stand shoulder to shoulder with us and make the same calls. So that's a practical action that any Welsh government could take. It doesn't matter about devolved competencies or not, right? And there's another, something else we've called on the Welsh government to do, and there was a motion passed on this in the Welsh Parliament, which was to review investments, procurement, grants. How do we spend our money? Do we spend it in a way that supports human rights? Or do we do the opposite, right? There was the motion passed in the Senedd for there to be a review of procurement and investments in grants in Wales, and that review never really took place. And there were really questions that went into the Finance Secretary that said, when's this review going to be? What's it going to look like? What are the terms of reference? And the response was, well, the review is ongoing. We always review things. Everything is under review at all times. And of course, if everything's under review at all times, it's always ongoing. There's no real review, is there? So we put in some freedom of information requests to find out, has the Welsh government got? Because there's no answers here, there's no transparency. So we asked, here's a list of companies. Have any of these companies received public money? And we've been assured over and over again, going back 2 years, the Welsh government, no financial support has been given to any company involved in the army of Israel. And lo and behold, we just asked about a number of companies that we know operate in Wales. There may be others because there's no transparency in this space, but we found that £500,000 in grant funding had been provided to a company involved in the army of Israel, involved in the supply chain to firefighter jets. So again, the assurances that we've received from the Welsh government, the lack of transparency was a little bit of digging. You find actually that this isn't the case, and still we have no review. So what we call for is a human rights due diligence process. When we're making grants to private companies, when we're entering into partnerships, we should have some confidence. We should, shouldn't we, about their human rights records. And we should take that into account. We should say,
look, we've got this money, we want to support jobs in our local community, we all do, but let's use it to support companies that are respecting, upholding, promoting human rights, rather than doing the opposite. And it's shameful, really, that perhaps the Welsh Government didn't know, because this process isn't in place. That's why they told us that no money would be given this, because the city didn't know. So that's another thing that the Welsh Government, practical action that we can take, so that the actions of the government align with what people in Wales want, what we're calling for. And we see double standards in this space as well. When Russia invaded Ukraine, for example, the Welsh government very quickly, I think it was the very day after, procurement notice to several relationships with companies linked to the Russian state. So that's a double standard, isn't it? And what does it say about human rights? That we respect human rights of our allies and not others? Is it radicalization of human rights? That it only counts for some and not others? And this consistency, this lack of it, it affects us all. It affects us all. It's part of the reason that we are where we are in terms of, the international relations that we can't, I don't know how to describe where we are, quite frankly, today. But it is a problem, and it's an action that the Welsh Government could absolutely take, and that consistency is critical. And I'll give you just one more. And again, it's about consistency here. When we call on the Welsh Government to work with, there's lots of PSC members here, and the work that PSC have done over many years on divestment at the local authority level in the Welsh Pensions Partnership. It's phenomenal work, and I'm so glad to see so many more councils. And there's still some left, if you're listening, you need to pass motions and divest too. Yeah. But, there's been real progress in that space. But when we ask the Welsh Government to take leadership, to provide political leadership in this space, well, local government pensions are not a matter for the Welsh Government, it's the responsibility of local government. There's no ambition in state responsibility. Now, on net zero, if you ask the Welsh Government about net zero, the pension partnerships and ethical investment of pensions to achieve their net zero goals, we're going to convene a summit of local authority leaders, we'll bring people together to have these conversations. So clearly, again, that double standard, and it's only when it's convenient that the Welsh Government is willing to take action, when it doesn't feel politically, and that's what the convenience here is, political. When it doesn't feel politically convenient, well, then lo and behold, this isn't a matter specifically for us. So there are practical actions that the Welsh Government can take, and we're heading up to the election. My hope, sincere hope, is that come May we have a Welsh Government that is willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with all of us to join us and what we're campaigning for and deliver a Wales that is truly globally responsible.
Diolch, Ben. Mae'n anodd dilyn hwnna, a hwnna'n rili gryf o ran
just statement around what needs to be done here in Wales by Welsh Government, as well as our international role as Welsh people. And thank you to Sabrina, she's my friend, I hope all of my friends, for all the work that you're doing here in Wales as Palestinians, here in this room. It isn't easy to talk about the trauma that you're experiencing, and we're so grateful that you're just here this evening, being in this room, really feeling the real sadness, the terrible sadness of what's happening to your people. I'm just going to talk quickly now because we're ready to move on. I want to thank you all for campaigning on behalf of Wales. I've been to many meetings where people have said, oh, someone asked for a ceasefire. Thank you to MPs asking for a ceasefire. That didn't just happen just because they decided. That call for a ceasefire happened because people on the grassroots level were influencing and asking and campaigning for this to happen. And people who came to Cardiff and wrote to their members. Only because of that constant campaigning on their streets, on our streets, that's the only reason that any of the politicians have come along with us. To be honest, the politicians didn't want to be part of this. They didn't want to be seen protesting. They didn't want to be criticised, perhaps. But things have changed. This hadn't even started 2 years ago. It has been breaking international law for many, many years, as we know, and we're still in that space today where we still have to campaign against it. We've done a lot of work across Wales, as Ben has said. We've been lobbying local authorities to take back control of these companies. We don't want the Israeli football team. We've campaigned against their presence with us, and we've asked for boycotts of Israeli companies or goods that are being sold to Israeli household. And it's only because of you, people like you and other organisations, people like you in this room, that we've been able to bring our cause to the public debate, and together we can change things politically. And when politicians come to you this evening, that's what you need to remember. You're here to serve us. That's what we need to tell the politicians. You need to be true to your principles. They need to be true to what they believe in and represent this cause for us. So I hope in May that you can vote for parties who will put Palestine in the ballot box and bring it into the public debate. International affairs may not be devolved, but nevertheless it's very important that Wales has its voice in this.
In relatively short notice. I really appreciate it. I think that's given us a really great start to the evening with touching on the reality of the Palestinian people, the situation, how international law relates to Wales, and the power of our campaigning. So I'm going to invite you to step down from the stage, and I'm very pleased to welcome Anthony Slaughter, the leader of the Green Party in Wales, and Queen Athilwa, the leader of the Welsh Councils. So, thank you both very much for joining us this evening. I know it's been a long day in the Senedd, so I think we very much appreciate you spending this evening focusing on such an important issue. Before I actually introduce myself, you weren't here, my name is May Senedd, I'm from Abergavenny Palestine Solidarity Campaign, and chairing this evening. So, the aim of this evening is very straightforward. We wanted to organise an opportunity for informed democratic debate ahead of the Senedd elections, and we want to hear clearly what each political party will do within Wales's powers and in relation to Palestine and legal obligations. So this is about accountability, policy and practical action. We did invite all political parties that are represented in the Senedd to take part this evening. And Palestine Solidarity Campaign is a party politically independent, non-political organisation. I want to share with everybody in the hall and at home that the Liberal Democrats have said they're not able to attend. The Labour Party has sent a statement. The Conservatives, Darren Miller, said he can't attend as well because of the prior commitment, and we didn't get a response from Reform. If there are other political parties here that are not represented in the Senedd, you're welcome to ask a question or make a statement from the audience in due course. So before we kick off, just because this has been an event in two parts, I just want to say a couple of words about the context, because it's clear that there just hasn't been a moment of greater jeopardy than we're facing now. A war of obliteration against the Palestinian people, followed by an expanded war across the Middle East, with global impacts on our climate and on people's living standards. And it's being played out on our streets with growing attacks on Muslims and Jewish people, as we've seen only in the last few days, and the incarceration of protesters calling for justice. So Palestine Solidarity Campaign stands for freedom for Palestine, and we condemn all forms of racism, discrimination and hatred, including Islamophobia, anti-Semitism and all other forms of bigotry. So as has been reflected in the first session, it's easy to think that in Wales we're too small to make a difference. But I wanted to just quote a few words of Nelson Mandela, who visited Cardiff in June 1998, and during his final year as President of South Africa. And he said, "When the call for international isolation of apartheid went out to the world, the people of Wales responded magnificently. The knowledge that local authorities all over Wales were banning apartheid products from canteens and schools, that the universities, the Welsh Rugby Union and the choirs had cut their links with was a great inspiration to us and our struggle. Action on such a scale could only flow from strong support by ordinary Welsh people." Well, now the call for solidarity has come from the Palestinian people, and Wales has responded magnificently. So we've just been hearing about the amazing work, the campaigning that has resulted in half of all local authorities now committing to divesting pension funds, which is a higher proportion than anywhere else in Britain. And so tonight our discussion is going to be focusing on the powers that Wales has and the responsibility that Wales has under international law, as Gavin was just saying. We have a series of questions that people who joined us in the hall tonight have submitted, and we're going to try and get through as many of those as possible. We're going to prioritise ones that are most closely linked to the powers that the Senedd has, so that they're relevant, and we will have time for the audience to respond as well to some of the responses from our two leaders here. So I'm going to invite in the first instance both of the party leaders that we've got to just make some opening remarks, anything that you want to say before we kick off, and I also have the statement from the Labour Party to read out as well. Should you start?
Yes, I will. Are we on? Yes, we are. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here this evening. We have quite a few questions to go through, I know, so maybe I shouldn't say too much now, so we can cover issues in response to questions. But there were a few things strike me. In many ways, Plaid Cymru took the political leads at the start of the genocide in Gaza, in taking the first motion calling for a ceasefire. Our MPs were consistent and strong in calling the UK government to account. This wasn't something that we had to think much about as a party. This was our instinctive response to what we saw with our eyes happening in Gaza, and it is what we have been brought up to believe as a core value. We can speak as individuals about what gave us those values. For me, it was my father visiting the West Bank, Christian Aid, when I was growing up, and seeing for himself the oppression that Palestinian people were living with day in, day out, and experiencing the curfews for himself, and seeing the pain in the eyes of children in Gaza. So to make a stand for justice and for an end to the genocide and make a stand for peace was something that we instinctively felt we had to take a lead on, and we are still guided, of course, by those values now.
And likewise, I won't explain the question, checking the question. I forgot to say that on the first. Firstly, thanks to the organisers for hosting this and arranging it. Shame on the other parties for not coming to defend their position. Like Clyde, Queen's voice is solid, calling the genocide for what it is. We cannot stop this until we start identifying what it is. But I think that was a quite happy accident to have that first panel. So we had three perfect perspectives that really set the tone for you. That personal perspective, the family connection, the reminder of the reality of what this is. We're seeing a genocide live streamed on our screens or our tablets. And it's not even on the front page anymore. And then we see what that disinterest does. It gives Trump and Israel the idea that they can just do this anywhere now. And it's not, it continues and it continues. And it's to our shame the UK government's complicity in all of this. And we need to see, I mean, going back to the lived experience, so fighting so important, always so important to remind of that. Then hearing that legal perspective, international legal perspective, which we'll touch on in the answers to the question. There are things that can be done, there are things that can be said, and our politicians need to stand up and do the right thing. And then Natasha was always absolutely spot on right. The change happens in that building over there and in Westminster because of what you do in your communities on the streets, not letting the political and media class ignore this obscenity, standing up in your communities, forcing your councils into divestment. We need to get the rest across the line. So I just want to end by paying credit to each and every one of you who campaigning for this. And I just also reflect, because some of you will know, I grew up a while in apartheid South Africa. I left that finished school before being conscripted into the apartheid army. When I left, I didn't believe Nelson Mandela would be free in my life. A few short years later he was, and that was the power of communities, the power of protest, the power of boycott, divestment, sanctions, and the power of international solidarity. But we must keep up the pressure. Thank you.
Thank you both. So we did invite parties who have not come this evening to submit a statement. I'm going to read out a statement from the Labour Party, from Jane Hutt. She said that war leaves scars that last generations, claiming the lives of many civilians as well as military personnel. It's important the voices of those men, women and children that have been caught in this conflict, losing their lives or have been displaced, are remembered and are always at the front of our minds when we discuss Gaza. Both the Welsh and the UK Labour governments have officially recognised the state of Palestine and the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination. We support a permanent ceasefire, ending the cycle of violence which has plagued the lives of Palestinians and Israelis, and a just, lasting peace through a two-state solution. Welsh Labour has been involved in making sure injured children from Gaza receive medical treatment in the UK, as well as ensuring the safe arrival of students from Gaza to commence their studies. They are expected to play an important role in rebuilding Gaza in the future. Through the Disasters Emergency Committee, bringing relief to the people of Gaza and Lebanon, the Welsh Government has donated almost £500,000, and we are grateful that the appeal has raised £3.1 million in Wales so far. But the most important are the lives and voices of everyone caught in the conflict. So we must continue calling for full humanitarian access to Gaza and emphasise that a lasting peace is vital to put an end to the suffering that so many people have endured already. So that's a statement from the Labour Party that I wanted to share with you, and we didn't have statements from the other parties. So, on with the discussion this evening, we did share the questions that have been submitted with the party leaders who are joining us in advance, because we wanted to, the aim of tonight isn't just a debate, it's to get actual commitments and clarity of the positions of the political parties. And so the questions that are being prioritised for discussion this evening, you have had sight of before, in case you think there's some very sick answers going on here. So I want to invite Samia to ask the first question. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
My name is May, Welsh Palestinian. Proud to call Cardiff and Wales my home. I want to begin with a question. When the world looked away, Wales stood up. The Senedd was one of the first parliaments to call for a ceasefire, and that mattered. It mattered to me personally, it mattered to my family, it mattered to everyone around me in Wales as well. And that was very heard and appreciated. But today, there is no ceasefire. Civilians in Gaza are still facing bombardment, displacement, and severe shortages of food, water, and medical supplies. Wales has shown it has a conscience. The question now is whether that conscience is matched by action. My question is, within your first 100 days in government, what 3 specific actions will you take within devolved powers to ensure Wales is not contributing to this crisis and is actively supporting the people of Wales?
We've got a little bit of flexibility, but I'm going to broadly try and keep to some equality in terms of time. So if you can keep your answers relatively brief, we've got a few to get through, and it'll give an opportunity for people to contribute. Thank you.
Thank you. The question to start with, and following on from what was said in the previous panel, the next Welsh Government has to set the tone from day one. No complication, there has to be clear calling out things for what they are. Wales needs to declare its support for the South African case in the international court, supported by 20 countries. We can say that, and we should do that. We need to be clear in calling out Israel for committing a genocide and being an apartheid state. But then there are other practical things that we need to see from the next government, and that is genuine boycott, divestment, and sanctions. They have to mean something. There cannot be any loopholes. We see these discussions about the Welsh Pension Partnership divesting, and it's riddled with loopholes. The next Welsh Government has to clamp down, make sure that saying there will be no public money invested in Gaza and Israel happens. It isn't impossible. It comes down to, as I said, transparency and the desire, the political desire for that action. So we see no Welsh investment in the apartheid state. We need procurement policies that are very clear and strict about not importing goods from Israel into our economy. These things can happen. We also need this is symbolic, as I said, in South African word, fully support a cultural and sporting boycott. There can be no place for genocide apologists in our sporting world and our cultural world. These things are all things that have been said, and that is why campaigners get so weary. Because there are politicians who will say these things. They need to do them, and that is when you do it during the first 100 days. You set the tone for the next Welsh Parliament. Wales will truly stand up for international justice and equality. It's not rocket science, it just needs the political will.
Thank you very much for the question. I've spoken in many contexts about my desire for the Plaid Cymru government to be the most international looking government that we have had in Wales, and that means making a stand for justice in the way that we behave internationally. And I guess I boil it down to saying that I want us to act in government as we have done in opposition, putting down that motion very early on, the first one to do it, welcoming the Palestinian ambassadors at Plaid Cymru's conference to show our solidarity with the Palestinian people, consistently calling through that time for recognition of the Palestinian state and an end to arms sales to Israel, for example. And I think, as I mentioned before, values are important to us, and we have to make sure from the get-go, from not just the first 100 days, but from the first day, that Plaid Cymru is a government that shows that it's driven by its values. Ethical procurement has to be at the heart of what we can do. There's so much that we need to do around procurement that brings us economic benefit, but it's also got to be procurement that is built in an ethical way that that speaks for who we are as a nation and what we expect, what we demand from our international links. We will work to ensure that the Wales Pensions Partnership does what it can to divest. That's very, very important. And it's about using our voice. I am never one to believe that Wales is somehow too small or too powerless to not make its voice heard. We must. We have an opposition, and we will in government too. In calling out the genocide for what it is, calling out what's happening in Lebanon now for what it is, calling injustice out wherever it is for what it is. Those are the values that I want people to sense in everything that we do as a people.
So I do want to come back on that. And I think as the evening continues, perhaps we'll have some opportunities to unpack those issues in more detail. So our next question is from Yusuf.
Hi everyone. Sorry for the noise from Palestine. My name is Yusuf. I'm from Newport. I'd just like to share a personal experience. Myself, in 2009, I was volunteering across a temporary hospital. And one of the images that never leave my mind is the children with third and fourth degree burn from the first World War. And from this moment, I just keep thinking, one of them was, his name is Arthur. He was 8 in his family, now about 25. This is a rare people. Until now, he's suffering from fourth degree burn. He even cannot help himself to go to the toilet or do the basics in his life. So we are speaking about rare people, rare things. It's not just some conflict having far away. So it's about, there's a lot of things where there's a lot of companies that military operation in Gaza are reported to have connection to Wales. This included pension funds and investments and testing facilities. Welsh public bodies control both pension, investment, and recruitment. And the Welsh government has an influence over the economic activities in Wales. Is this my understanding? So my question, do you believe that it's acceptable for the Welsh public money or the Welsh land to be linked to companies associated with serious violation of international human law? If not, what is the specific action you will take within the devolved powers to invest in? Thank you.
Yes, this is about specific action, not just positions on things.
And again, it's a relatively straightforward answer. No, I do not believe that public money should be involved in actions that are contrary to international humanitarian law. That is very, very clear to me. It's part of why we call on UK governments to cease arms sales to Israel, because it was clear what those arms were being used for. It was unethical. It should not have been allowed to happen. There's a call that we made. But there are actions that can be made within Wales and the devolved powers too. That would include those companies in Wales who may be in receipt of Welsh Government funds and who are involved in unethical arms sales, for example. And that would also, shall I wait for you to come back in the room with baby in hand? Sorry. No, that's fine. That's fine. It's good to welcome a guest. Yeah. So, whilst that would be true for arms sales, it would also be true for the use of land in Wales, for example, where Welsh Government should and we would be making a stand in saying that it is not acceptable for public money or land to be used in ways that are contrary to international law. And there are win-wins here. We want an ethical procurement policy, again, because we want to make sure that we are adhering to international law, but we also want to develop ethical local supply chains, which are good for creating jobs and creating economic prosperity here in Wales. So it's two birds with one stone, but it's a no in that situation.
Thank you for the question and your story as well, because that shows the white fossils should not be legal anywhere. And when people talk, and politicians from other parties will talk about economic growth and the need for an arms industry, that's what they're defending. That's what they're saying. Murder and genocide. So the question what we do is that clamping down on all Welsh public money procurement, not giving point on land as well. Welsh pension funds should be going through loopholes to companies like Palestine. We all know what they do. So what it is that they want that production is actually use those powers we've got. Get that transparency, no more reviews, no more looking into no more endless discussions about ethics. We need the government to act firmly and with intent from day one.
Palestinian territory is unlawful, and that states must not assist in maintaining that unlawful situation. So my question from Kathy is, what specific changes to procurement, investments or partnerships will you make to ensure Welsh companies, Wales complies with that obligation? So once again, what specific changes to procurement, investment or partnerships will you make to ensure Wales complies with the rulings of the International Court of Justice?
Thank you. And as you referred to earlier, we do have a international legal obligation to be trying to stop the genocide. We should not shy away from that. So we are going to keep coming back to the economy, we can keep coming back to investment, procurement, but partnership is also another good one. No company or organisation receiving Welsh public money should be in any form of partnership with anyone involved in the arms trade, selling arms to Israel, or investing in the Israeli Defence Force. That is another line we should go across, and I think that's one. So thank you for the question, because I missed that point, because that is the other place we need to put some emphasis and make sure that Welsh public money does not fund this in any shape or form.
Thanks for the question, and in effect of drilling deeper down, aren't we, into what government can do, and you can look at direct associations, or you can break it down into aiding and assisting, or indirectly having links, and that's where partnerships and networks need to be judged very carefully as to whether they are in some way facilitating arms sales or being part of an ethical actions. I think one, again, I highlight the ethical procurement, general aspect to this, but maybe use as one example the need for the Development Bank of Wales to make sure that in its dealings with companies on considering payments and loans, that takes into consideration any potential or actual unethical activity. So I think that's something, again, that a government should be exploring if it is to show that it's genuinely doing everything that it can to make sure that Wales abides by international law.
Is it advantageous to have a legal change on law in Wales for companies not to be allowed?
More specific, will your government make it by law illegal to invest in genocide companies?
It's a very good question, and absolutely every legal means should be interrogated to see if it can be used. So I agree with the premise that all options should be considered. whether you need to go through a legal process or whether having a government that initially is able to regulate, to ensure that it has a policy backed by the Senedd that means an ethical practice is effectively barred in Wales. Maybe that's something that we could act quicker on. But absolutely, we should look at what's legal or not. I'm very conscious that foreign affairs is not a devolved issue as much as I would like it to be. So you kind of consider what the barriers would be, what the opportunities would potentially be.
Yeah, I think it highlights the starting point of public money, because that's the money the government has control over. We should be pushing for that legislation. I think it is complex, as we said, with foreign affairs, but then we should also be pushing for Westminster to be taking action as well, and also pushing for, how do you disagree, pushing for those greater powers so that Wales could make those decisions and legislate in that way.
And these questions are driven down, aren't they, on the first question. So what would it look like in practice then if there was success here? For example, the Development Bank of Wales, what guidance would be needed or criteria would need to be set? What actually does that look like in terms of the Senedd using its powers in Welsh Government?
It's about laying down the government's expectations and the remits under which the Development Bank of Wales acts to make sure that it complies with the ethical standards set by the rest of the government in Wales.
Anyone else? I'm going to invite the audience to respond to any of these questions. If there are people who want to do that, I've seen a couple of hands.
Yeah, we're drilling down into the specifics, aren't we? And it's really good to get support for ethical procurement. I think that can be a really significant step what the government can take. How we define ethical procurement is really important here, and I think both of you have touched on international law. I wonder whether or not one of the things that many people have campaigned for that Senate motions have previously supported is that point around human rights due diligence checks. I wonder whether or not you see that as a foundational part of that ethical procurement.
Basically, this question: what do we mean by ethical, and how does human rights and assessing the human rights standards that people you do business with essentially feed into that? I mean, ethical procurement doesn't just relate to international affairs and human rights. It's procurement in making sure that the workforce is looked after properly. It's ethical in ensuring that environmental standards are upheld as part of public investments and so on. It's a matter of defining them, isn't it, what our expectations are, and absolutely human rights behaviour, who we do business with, whether people are breaking fundamental human rights, whether somebody is committing genocide is a fairly easy one to tick. Is it not? These are measures that you can set in order to take.
Thank you. Apologies to people on the line. I'm struggling to hear you. I'm playing the microphone, so I should try harder. Yeah, it's dealt in the detail. What is ethical? What does ethical mean? What does sustainable mean? It needs a clear framework, and we can start in Wales with Wellbeing Future Generations that use that well-intentioned framework and start putting into place clear guidelines of what ethical means. Ethical doesn't mean building weapons that aren't as bad as white phosphorus. So there has to be very clear red lines that this isn't ethical, this will never, the public procurement policy in Wales will never tolerate any level of ambiguity. We need to be very, very clear. We need to put things down in such hostile language, because, and we need to do that. And the way we do that, and I do come back to this thing quite a lot, is by talking to people and co-creating, is by working with people such as yourselves, working with the communities in those countries, finding out what people think, because quite often we mean very well and make a mistake about something we don't know. So it needs real, genuine, democratic accountability and democratic contribution to setting those standards.
Essentially, this is still obvious, it is. Essentially, we need a government, don't we, that you know, reflects back to the people it represents what its values are and what's important to those people. And it's about, you know, gauging those elements of our actions as a government and asking ourselves all the time, you know, do these reflect Wales's values? Does what we're doing today speak to what Wales is, or the kind of Wales we want it to be? You know, these are, you know, guiding principles that any government should be challenging itself on all the time. And I would say that the right kind of government, you know, would do that.
Just another quick point on this one as well. Most well-intentioned government will sometimes get it wrong as well, and that's where the campaign is so strong. Holding power to account and letting people like ourselves know that even if we've got the best intentions in the world, we've gone down the wrong route, that's where your campaigning is so vital.
People want to come in on this point. Any hands up on this point?
Just to, what springs to my mind is that when we're talking about ethical policy, it goes up against political expediency. You know, in Wales, we struggle to provide jobs, to provide prosperity, and you know, decisions, which I think you just touched on, have to be sometimes made. And you know, and I think too often the decision to fall in with the global economy, the way the complexities run, to get those jobs here in Wales, and people change their standards in politics, don't they then? How would you answer that?
It's a really, really important and well-made point. I can be very political here and draw comparisons with, you know, what the incoming current Labour government did and the way it was judged very early by the voting public. Hold on, we thought this government had some values, and it's sold out, you know, very, very quickly here on winter fuel payments or cutting benefits to the most vulnerable people. So I expect to be held to a very high level of scrutiny. And you're right that sometimes a government will be tempted to cut a corner because there is an easy fix. But governments have to be ready to be very, very transparent about what its values are, be very, very consistent in the way that it acts according to those values, and be confident that we're not somehow, you know, losing out because of our determination to stick to our values. You know, we are being encouraged by the populist rights to drop our ambitions on energy, because they say there's an easier way to drill, baby drill, and you know, that's the way to cut bills. Well, no, you're wrong. For environmental reasons, we need to be switching to renewables. You know, well, we'll create lots and lots of jobs and doing this as well, so you're wrong. The same would be true when it comes to our position on international affairs and human rights and international justice too.
Yeah, another very personal question, because why should people believe election after election after election, change, we're different. We have to prove that. We have to prove that to you. And it's also, again, that's always been this, more or less, in the last few decades. But we've got some really bad faith actors in politics now. And they're playing on that. They're telling people it is easy. We can fix things easy. Net zero. This is going to be. We're going to have attacks on net zero. We're going to have attacks on immigration. We're going to have misinformation and lies. People are hurting. Things are hard out there. Life is hard right now. People are struggling to pay their bills. Jobs are precarious. And they're going to have people telling simple solution to this. Ignore those people talking about ethics and sustainability. We can fix this. It's just the economy. I was on panels with 5 different schools the other day, and the young reform person I've never met before, and one young woman asked, what would your parties do? We're going to link education into a precarious financial situation. What would your parties do? And we all answered as best honestly as we could, and the reform guy was really going to have to read the room. We need to cut waste, we need to cut taxes, we need to stop immigration. That's how we build an economy. And that's what we're up against, and that's why we have to hold ourselves to an even higher standard than ever before. We have to, as politicians from progressive side of the left, we have to prove we stand by our values and that we can deliver better futures for everyone by standing by our values.
Thank you. So we're on to question 4. We've got less than half an hour to go, so we probably should pick up the pace a little bit. So the next question is from Frankie, and it's about Welsh public money. Okay, yeah, to go back to the practical living down from the financial point of view, and to talk precisely about settlements and UN blacklists. So particular things, settlements, UN blacklists. And I've got a short preamble here just for context. Illegal Israeli settlements built on stolen Palestinian land are a war crime. The United Nations maintains an official blacklist of companies operating in illegal Israeli settlements. So it's the official blacklist of companies operating in illegal Israeli settlements. Parties in Wales have backed recognition of a Palestinian state. Welsh public bodies spend billions of pounds every year on goods, services and investments. Some of that money may currently be flowing to companies on that UN blacklist. My question is, will your party commit to prohibiting Welsh public bodies from procuring goods or services from any company on the UN settlement blacklist, putting Wales on the right side of international law and ensuring Welsh public money is never complicit in a war crime?
That's the easy one, yes. It has public money, we have no. There should be no place for Welsh public money by trading with companies or buying goods that produce in those illegal settlements. It comes back right, keeping back that point about transparency. The campaigners shouldn't have to be putting freedom of information requests to find out if the Welsh government is looking at companies that are involved. It keeps just coming back to that transparency, but absolutely there's no debate to be had there. No Welsh public money should be spent on companies that are involved in trade and settlements.
And again, for me, the importance of what we've heard is in the statement that you make, and I align myself with the statement that you make, and the importance of recognising the war crimes being faced by those in the settlements, and what the war crimes and the effect that is having on Palestinian people who are subjected day in, day out to attacks and occupation of territory. It's a yes, it's a simple yes for me. It's again in putting that ethical procurement policy together and making sure that you're tightening up all those loopholes, making sure that you're identifying again, not just the direct links which are more easy to identify, but drilling down further into what the indirect links are to help and see how those can be better discussed.
about the timescale, isn't it? And what would you envisage in terms of how long it would take to make this change in policy and action?
Well, the policy is immediate if you have a government that believes in something, and immediately that becomes what government sets out to do. It's then a matter of practically, taking the action that government needs to enact its own policy. The policy becomes essentially immediate.
I'd argue a policy is there. The policies are there already, and it just needs those new voices in government, need people pushing for policies to actually be made into legislation. It needs no waffling, it needs no, let's declare another declaration from overwhelming Welsh government. It is just everyone holding us to account. These things are in our manifesto, hold us to account and make sure we deliver them.
Thank you. And our next question is from Mel, and it's about pensions and divestment.
Hi, I'm Mel, and I'm from Newport. I'm a member of Welsh local government pension schemes together with over 412,000 members, 22 local authorities, 382 employers contributing. Recent surveys show that 88% of members and 50% of Welsh councils would support divestment out of companies supporting illegal occupation, war crimes, crimes against humanity and environmental destruction. The pension schemes are now partnered with the Wales Pension Partnership, and it's worth a historical £25 billion. Historical. It's welcomed by the current Welsh Government, and they highlight early infrastructure projects in Wales for benefit and prosperity of Welsh people. It could be compared to Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund, which has legislated 2004 for environmental and social governance through socially responsible investment. Now, the Norwegian Sovereign Fund is worth today $1.9 trillion US. Yet they have a very, very effective socially responsible governance. So my question is, will your party commit to establishing a legally binding ethical investment framework for the Wales Pension Partnership so our pensions and prosperity are never complicit in war crimes, crimes against humanity and environmental disaster? If you do, when will you do it and how?
Yes, we are actually deep now. It's absolutely to recognise the power of those pension funds. That money could be building the green future we so desperately need. That money could be creating a healthier Wales. So it's really good to see local authorities listening to campaigners and starting to do it at the local authority level. But like so many things in Wales, the Welsh government shrugs their shoulders and says, well, it's up to the councils, it's up to local authorities. Let's have national legislation that says no local authority, no Welsh pension funds can be invested in arms, in genocide, in war crimes.
Couple of technical aspects to this, and Welsh government, the legal situation is that Welsh government cannot direct, demand or legally require the Wales Pension Partnership to invest in a way that is binding. That's the legal situation. But and in fact, it is duty bound under law to maximise returns for its members and manage risks, and that's a non-involved issue. So there's a limit there on what Welsh government can do, but there are ways that we can act. You will see in the manifesto that we publish soon that there'll be a number of references to our determination to work collaboratively with the WPP to help it move away from investments that are unethical and move towards investments that can really make a difference to the kind of Wales that we're trying to build. And yes, it can be housing, it can be transport programs. This can be transformative if we're able to tap into it in a way, looking at it as a kind of wealth fund. Incidentally, we want to have another wealth fund, built from our natural resources in Wales. So yes, we want to do that as a government, but politically as well, there are tools that we want to strengthen by making sure that we return as many councillors in the election next year who will make those decisions from within the Wales Pensions Partnership on its investment decisions. We know that votes have been taken, it was referred to earlier, wasn't it, in councils in Wales. A high proportion of Welsh councils have made the right call and that they support divestment from large companies and so on. Well, the more people from my party, and I guess Anthony would say the same, get elected, the more the chance that we will be able to make better investments, more ethical investment decisions from within the Wales Pensions Partnership. So all my councillors, better decisions.
A tiny response to that, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
Sorry, just to say, the how, would you consider an ethics council? Norway has legislated for an ethics council, and they forensically examine and assess the risks of investments in risk to human rights and to war crimes.
I haven't considered it with the title Ethical Council, but when we have a Welsh wealth fund up and running, we absolutely need to make sure that it has mechanisms that ensures that it works in an ethical and socially responsible way and focused on the prosperity of Wales and environmentally responsible and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's kind of going back by saying that getting the right frameworks in place, and that sounds like a good example, good model.
Yeah, we are running short of time now. I think we should move to our question about political solidarity in relation to the health and education system. So Amjad, I think, has got a question on that. If I can encourage questions and answers to be brief.
Hi, my name is Amjad. I'm a Welsh policy and healthcare professional from the Morgan. A Welsh Prime Minister changed the course of history in the Middle East. In 1970, David Lloyd George's government issued the Balfour Declaration, a single letter that promised the homeland in Palestine without asking the people already living there. One letter, 1 century of displacement, suffering and loss. Wales didn't do this alone, but Wales is part of this story. And that comes with responsibility. Today in Gaza, medical universities have been bombed to rubble. Student doctors cannot finish their degrees, and junior doctors cannot train. And people are dying, not only from bombs, but because there are not enough doctors left to save them. Wales has universities, Wales has the NHS, Wales has the power to help. I cannot stress enough how important education for all parents, particularly the Palestinian parents. My question is, will you commit to training posts for Palestinian medical students in Welsh universities, providing NHS training placements for junior doctors, and treating a small number of injured children in Wales? I just want to comment on the statement from Mrs. Hutt. I'm sorry to disagree with her statement because we tried to bring 2 students from Gaza back in September. And a fund was raised, but the visa was rejected. And we couldn't believe that the Welsh government couldn't really help with the visa status.
Yes. You want quite specific points there around medical students in Welsh universities, providing NHS training placements and treating a small number of injured children.
Thank you. And I was really pleased when I saw that question earlier because I meant to refer to earlier to talk about all the actions we want and the Welsh Government could do to stop things. But we also, as you highlighted, we need to look at things the Welsh Government can do to help things, make things better. And that having gone into the details, I would think it's something that the Welsh Government should be linked to. It is a way of showing solidarity, and as has been pointed out, Welsh Government looking like people like the Ukrainian community. So I think every mechanism is there, which should be used to make something like this happen.
Firstly, thanks for your work within the NHS in Wales. I'll just close with the visas issue first of all. I believe we should have the power over visas in Wales in order to. And there are examples around the world of sub-states visa powers that we really could use in order to strengthen our own workforce, and in this case as well to work with others in a way that is responsible and that is the right thing to do and could make a small contribution to the efforts in Gaza. Yes is the answer to the question. I think we should look at every option for how we can use our resources. We have finite resources, we have limited resources, we have financial constraints, we know that, but I'm very, very happy to explore like what we can do and look at specific programs that could be, Wales's contribution as part of a wider international effort to make sure that the ravaged health sector in Gaza is helped to overcome the devastation that it has faced over the past few years. And some of the most powerful events that I've taken part in the Senedd, for example, has been, and you may have been there, I think, has been on the loss of doctors and nurses and health and care workers in Gaza through this devastating assault on the fundamentals of life by area.
We are coming towards the end of the evening. Our next question, and possibly our last one, is from Sunny, who is 16 and will be a first-time voter. So you can ask your question.
Hello everyone, I'm Samir, and my question is, do you believe that the Senedd should fly the Palestinian flag each year on the UN Day of International Solidarity with the Palestinian people, both as an act of solidarity and in recognition of Wales' role in the Balfour Declaration?
Thank you very much for your question, and absolutely we have to, as a nation, acknowledge our past as a nation. The question itself, it's not one for me, it's one for the Senedd Commission itself, and I hope it would consider it, because as a matter of principle, it's something I could participate in.
Again, thank you for your question. We have my full support. It's an important gesture in solidarity. We talk about the actions, but also those gestures, those symbolic signals that Wales stands with people in Palestine are so crucial, that we acknowledge the ongoing genocide and war crimes, and that we acknowledge the past. So I would definitely support it and be happy to make it happen.
Well, that's all the questions we've got time for this evening, and I think we should give a really big round of applause to our gone into quite a lot of detail. There's so much more that could be said on this issue. I can see there are hands of people who want to continue to speak. We did say to the party leaders who were invited that they would have the opportunity to have some closing remarks. And I'm going to take just one last audience comment because I think that it's important that we very quickly, if you wanted to.
Yeah, so thank you for your time this evening. I do have an additional question. Sorry.
Could it be a comment on the questions?
It's around the need for education as a safe space for our youth to be able to discuss this within schools and other educational institutions. And I think it's really important to create those safe environments for them and for them to learn about the facts that what's happened, even the inclusion of the Welsh connection to where we are today, and not shy away from that. And I think it's important for it to be included in the curriculum. So I know it's a comment, but a question as well in terms of your commitment to ensuring safe spaces are created in our education system for our young people to explore the facts on the ground of what's going on, because we're not educating our future and we're not educating the future risers for change, then this cause will be lost. So I ask for that.
I'm happy to respond to that. I'm just going to just a couple of last comments. Absolutely, I believe in doing all we can through the education system to create good citizens. And creating good citizens is about learning who we are, where we have come from, and learning about the world around us, the challenges that others face, the atrocities of Gaza, the crimes that have been committed there, have to be understood and discussed with our young people if they're going to be part of creating a peaceful future for the world in which we live. So, we have mechanisms within the education system, within the back and so on, which can be expanded, I think, in citizenship education about democracy here, and yes, absolutely about international affairs too. I'm a journalist by profession. I believe in the power of sharing stories and discussing with each other in order to learn. And the best time is to sow those seeds of learning amongst our young students at schools. We have a stain on the international community that we have witnessed in Gaza over recent years. We believe that the Israeli government has to be held to account for their appalling crimes in Gaza. And my message to you is this: that I and my company will not give up on calling out the atrocities that have been committed against innocent civilians, so many thousands of children among them. And tonight, as at all times, Plaid Cymru stands with the people of Palestine, and Plaid Cymru stands with people of peace wherever they are in the world.
Yeah, thank you. And on that comment, yeah, absolutely. Safe spaces to be able to talk and learn about these things are so crucial. And hand in hand with that is platforming those voices as well. So it's not just people who like us on these platforms talking about it, it's people with a lived experience. We need those voices heard, and young people want to learn. And we know what happens. This is why things drop off the front page. This is why people stop paying attention. Because it's not being discussed. The reality is there's just another war, and there's another war. That's why it's so important to hear from voices, to get family connections and what this actually means. And that's why we will always continue to stand between the people of Palestine and the Palestinian community. We will always put genocide out what it is. Absolutely, all those guilty of these war crimes must be held to account. and also the UK government, its complicity must be held to account. I do believe we will see British ministers who will finish as we started. And finally, again, just to pay tribute to all of you, each and everything you're doing. I guess, get outside the First Minister's door from day one. Call another one of these after 100 days. It's a reminder to what we said.
Thank you both very much, and I think that's a very good point to end on. This night has been about surfacing the issues and about clear commitments and about accountability, and this movement will be holding politicians in Wales to account. I do want to end on a few words of thank you. There's a huge amount of work that has gone into organising this event. Thank you to our panel of speakers earlier on, to everyone who asked a question, and I think they were quite penetrating and thoughtful questions. I want to thank the volunteers who've helped this evening, our interpreter, Catherine. I know there have been some technical problems. Including our technical work, including the live broadcast. Thank you very much. And particularly Zahid Noor, who has been our movement happens because of so much energy and commitment and work by everybody, and there's a lot more work to be done. There are practical things that everybody in this room and everybody online can be doing. First of all, stay involved with Palestine Solidarity Campaign, share this debate, talk to your friends, your union, councillors, candidates, communities. Secondly, press your local Senedd candidates. Ask them where they stand on all of these issues: procurement, divestment, due diligence, public accountability. The more that candidates commit before the election, the stronger our hand will be afterwards. Thirdly, keep pressuring your local councillors to deliver on the pensions divestment issue. We know that over half have now committed to divest, but we want all councils in Wales to divest. Fourthly, if you're not already a member, do join the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. It helps to build pressure that we need to keep Palestine on the agenda after the headlines move on. And finally, this is ahead of an election, we need as many people as possible to vote and to ask others to vote with Palestine and human rights and international law in mind. So, diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much for everyone this evening.
Including when I'm in Palestine. I've worked on and off in Palestine since 2004 as a British and Welsh trained emergency nurse and paramedic. This isn't a conflict. This is white supremacy. This is apartheid. And this is genocide. I'd like to ask you about your, well, firstly, I'd like to call the Labour Party for the absolute drivel statement that they sent in. That was absolute nonsense, and I'm not surprised that they're not here. They didn't actually ceasefire. But I got to say, beyond that, to Prime Minister, because you did call for a ceasefire when I was 10 on the website of Gaza, and the sky was ablaze. I've been back and forth to Palestine, as I said, multiple times for over 20 years, and I saw nothing like I saw. I've seen nothing like I saw in 2025. Now, Wales is supposed to be a country of heaven. It's supposed to be a country of peace. It's supposed to be a country of sanctuary. Yet we have an arms industry in Cymru, which stems from Anglesey and Swan, right under Pembrokeshire. And there's a lot of talk of that arms industry, which is an industry of murder. When we consider, we put sanitising words in it, call it an arms industry, and when we consider that between 43 and 60% of people that are killed in modern warfare are innocent men and women trying to bring up their children, grandparents that are proud of their grandchildren, How can we as a nation of peace, that we portray to the world that we're a nation of peace and a nation of sanctuary, justify that by having an arms industry, an industry of murder? And now there's even talk of expanding an industry of murder, regardless of the fact that at least 50% of people killed in modern warfare are innocent people, regardless of the fact that it's a horrific environmental footprint in the countries that were being bombed and in the countries that the weapons are being made. And we have very, very little socio-economic benefit to the environment that the arms industry are in. So I would expect the Plaid Cymru government, I'm an anarchist, I don't believe in any form of governance, but I am really praying for a Welsh or a Green government in this power of it. And I expect you to devolve this weapon, this industry of murder from our country of hell.
By way, Wales will be an independent nation. Able to be stand up as a nation of peace locally. And these are values that are important to Wales, always have been. We will stand for peace and